it's not really pretty right now. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm actually going to talk about some current events that are happening right now in America, but also happening in Canada as well. Some of those topics are going to be a little bit sensitive and it's going to be somewhat hard to stomach, but I find that I have to talk about it, mostly because it's impacting communities that I am in, and it also impacts the people that I know, and it's difficult, but we have to learn from it and we have to kind of grow with it too as well, and to talk about racism and to talk about crimes against the races. Bear with me and let's learn from it together. So if you guys are not informed yet, or if you guys didn't know, there has been actually an uptick of crimes against Asian communities in America and also happening in Canada in the year 2020 and also in 2021. I believe most of the hate crimes and most of the instances are being reported now and being more publicized because it's under scrutiny and it's like under the eye of the government. So these newses are breaking out now, but I believe that it's been happening all year long in 2020, mostly because of racist comments towards the Chinese community and also Asian communities in America due to the coronavirus. It's hard for me because I'm hearing stories of the weak, the vulnerable, and the elderly who are being hurt, people who haven't done anything wrong, people who have lived many, many years, who have immigrated to the United States, who have immigrated to Canada, who have dedicated a lot of their lives and their years in the country that they currently live in, and being hated on and being hurt by it, physically and emotionally hurt by it. So it's been a really tough time to stomach. And I'm sure if you ask any of your friends who are East Asian descent, how they feel about situations like this, they probably wouldn't want to talk to you because it's still a very heavy time and process to talk about. It feels like that constantly there is news being put out of another elderly person or another Asian person who has been hurt on the street, who's being pushed and shoved, and who's being punched. And it's a very scary time right now. What's really scary about this time, I think, for me personally, is that you don't know who's going to be the person who's going to be attacking you. Some person walking down the street might be someone who you think that they look kind and they look friendly, but they may have an ulterior motive and they might hurt you once you turn your back on them. They will come at you from different directions. They'll come from you when you're not expecting it the most. And I think that's the scariest part, because you don't know who is going to be attacking you, but you will also know that there are people out there who put personal blame and who put this hatred towards you. And it's not fair. It's really tough and it's hard to stomach a lot of the times. And after hearing news of, the shootings that happened, and also hearing news about the elderly being like hit to the point that they have really bad injuries that they're put in the hospital, or seeing them actually being shoved on security footage, is really tough. And I try not to dive too much deeply into it, mostly because I'm very sensitive to violent topics like that, especially in real life. I don't want to see people getting injured for the shock factor, and I don't want to see people injured in general. It's not a good feeling, and it's definitely not something I want to see. But sometimes I do come across it, and those images kind of stick in my head, and they're really tough. So I wouldn't recommend you to go out and go seek those videos and seek graphic images to know what's really happening. But I would recommend you to keep up with the news, to pay attention to actually what's happening, and to be, informed of what's happening. And I guess also what I want to say is that for me personally, I'm doing okay. I live in a predominantly Asian community, and I live in a city that's multicultural, and we understand each other's backgrounds. At least that's what I like to hope to think that I do live in a place like this. But if you do feel like that your Asian friends may not be particularly feeling great right now or feeling safe, hopefully you reach out to them. Hopefully you give them a couple of words that support them and that give them some strength, and then also help out if you can with whatever they may need, but also being safe, because right now the pandemic is still happening. what I find the most helpful when situations like this arise, where I may not feel like I'm the most educated about another person's culture or their background or what they have personally experienced, what I like to do is that I like to read books that talk about certain topics like this, or to talk about other people's experiences so you can learn and grow together. So I'm here to actually recommend you a couple of Asian books that I have on my TBR that I would really, really, really like to get to read to soon, very next, mostly because I heard reviews of it, or mostly also because they are very limited Asian books, I feel like, still in the bookish community. And anytime I see an Asian book written by an Asian author, I grab I just grab it right away because I know that it's so rare that I have to cherish it and I have to support my fellow Asian voices. So here are some of the books. The books that I'm going to be talking about are focused strictly on East Asian voices right now, mostly because that's just kind of like what's happening right now in society. But I'll also be talking about a lot of South Asian voices and be more inclusive of other voices too as well on this channel in my later videos. So let's get started with some of the books that I want to read, and hopefully that you can add to your TBRs too, so that you can learn more about different cultures and experiences. So I think the first book that I want to talk about is this book by Tracy Chee. This one's called We Are Not Free, and this is basically taking place back in the time, I think, of the World War II era, where Japanese people were actually taken away and stripped out of their houses and put into these internment camps in America simply because they were known as the enemy. And despite these Japanese citizens being residents of America for many generations and that they were actually born in America and never been to Japan, they were still taken away from everything that they've ever owned and loved and put in these internment camps and basically treated like that they were the enemies of the whole country. And it sucks. It was a really hard part in history, and it's something to learn about and something to really grasp in our heads. And this isn't just happening in America. I believe it happened in Canada as well. And there has been a lot of things that are happened in our history that were obviously horrible to experience, but something to learn from so that we know that we can't do it again. So the next book that I want to talk about is This Time Will Be Different by Misa Segura. I think that's how you say her last name, but I apologize if I said it wrong. Basically, this is another Japanese American novel featuring a teenager and a family who lives and works at a floral shop, and that's their family business. But what happens is that the family business is kind of being forced to close down, and they're going to sell it to the same family that kind of tricked their older generations than their relatives of their businesses back when World War II was happening and the internment camps were happening. And this was like kind of like their grudge against the family who swindled them. So I'm excited to read this book, mostly because I believe Charles from Books on Stereo actually read this book and he recommended me this one. So I know that this one's going to be a very powerful read, mostly because it just sounds like it's a good one. So I'm 26 years old this year, and when I was growing up, I never had any Asian role models, Asian books to really look up to. It's still very rare for me to see Asian people in movies and in TV shows, like East Asian people, so much to the point that sometimes when I watch really big production films such as Marvel, Avengers, and I see an Asian character in there that kind of looks like me, I freak out. And I'm really excited and happy to see those people in media. And what I'm really excited about right nowadays is that there is a lot of discussion on diversity and inclusion in books. And majority of the time, it happens a lot from the ground up and happens with younger reader novels and middle grade novels, which I find that it's so important because when you're growing up, you don't know anything about the world, but the books that you read kind of shape your mindset about the people around you. And seeing diversity in the younger reader novels, I think is so important. And I'm so excited to introduce you this series that I've been reading and catching up on that I really think that everybody should read, mostly because it's talks about many different issues that are a little bit darker than what you would think, but also keeping the lightness and the fluffiness of a younger reader novel. So the book series that I'm actually talking about is actually called Mindy Kim, and then afterwards it's by Lila Lee. So this is an Asian American younger reader novel that I think that you can pick up to yourself, but if you have younger readers in your household, definitely buy these books. So it's about Mindy Kim. Mindy Kim has a dad, but unfortunately Mindy Kim's mom has passed away, away. And now it's just Mindy Kim and her dad navigating a new school, navigating new people in the classrooms, and also growing up as like a younger kid who just wants to have fun, you know, be normal, and have a dog. So it's really cute and it's really lovely. And I read all of the books back during the Lunar New Year readathon that I hosted with my friend Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers. And these authors are just so important to younger readers right now. And these pictures were also illustrated by an Asian illustrator, which I find so amazing because I think that's what publishers tend to do. They try to match up the illustrator's ethnicity to the author and the character's ethnicity to really give that inclusion factor into it. So I really appreciate it. So the next series that I want to talk about that is for younger readers is actually a series that I've never read before, but it's basically Diary of an Ice Princess, and if I'm correct, but basically the series features a character who is actually half Filipino and half Caucasian, so it has mixed diversity, and that's what really intrigued me, mostly because I've never read many Filipino authors before. I've never read Filipino voices before that I felt like that I'm kind of ignoring a whole country. So I feel like I should go into it, and I really like younger readers. So I'm excited for this, especially discussing about, you know, magic, fun, and also their culture. I feel like I should have started my video with this book, mostly because this book was the most recent read that I read last night. And when I was reading it, I just ended up bawling and crying, mostly because this one talked about racism and it really hit home. So this one is by a Chinese American author called E.L. Shen, and this one's called The Comeback. It follows a Chinese American teen who is a figure skater and who wants to make it to nationals and become the next best American figure skater ever out there. She's powerful, she knows what she's doing, and she's a great skater, but off the ice, she doesn't feel quite the same. She doesn't have the same amount of confidence, mostly because she's living in a city that is filled with people that don't look like her, and she's kind of like the Asian sticking out. And what happens is that one of her classmates actually makes really racist comments towards her. It really hurts her and it really brings her down, but she tries to be strong and she tries to make comebacks, but it doesn't help. And what happens is that she needs help from other people in her life. And I think that this book was so important, especially to me and especially to, I think, like Chinese readers out there, but also for readers that aren't Chinese, to learn more about our culture, because it had a lot of little nuggets and like things that are happening in this book that I heard of before in my culture and that I could relate to. And it was just so precious and so perfect. And I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars, and I hope you guys pick it up soon. So the next two books I want to talk about is actually by a Chinese Canadian author called Jackie Lau. I've read some of Jackie's books before, and I picked up two of her full-length novels. They're fairly short, but they're full-length anyways. So the first one's called Mr. Hotshot Ceo. It's about a Chinese couple, and basically they have a fake dating relationship. He will pay her for her to be his fake girlfriend. And then in the second book called Grumpy Fake Boyfriend, this one is basically about a best friend's younger sister paying him to be the fake boyfriend. And I think that these two will be just very sweet and very nice to read. So the next book that I want to talk about is Just Be Cool, Jenna Sikai by Debbie Michiko Florence. And this is a Japanese American novel about a girl who got broken up with by her boyfriend, but then she decides that she doesn't want boys anymore, and she basically focuses a lot on her writing competition, so much that she goes to this diner every day after school to focus writing on her piece of homework, and then afterwards some guy is always sitting in her spot. So then this is kind of the romance between them, and I love Debbie's writing. I absolutely loved Keep It Together, Kiko Carter, which was the first book in the series, and I highly recommend you to check her out. So the next book that I want to talk about is actually a Vietnamese American novel, and it's called A Faux Love Story, but I think Faux is actually pronounced as Pho, and it's by Lone Lee, and basically this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling of two characters who have families that hate each other, and therefore their offspring can't be together. Jessica from Peace Love Books actually read this book and she really enjoyed it, so I'm really excited to read this one too as well. So the next book that I want to pick up is this book that was sent to me from Scholastic Canada. This one's called The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling by Chim, and this is a Chinese American novel about a girl who is a daughter of a wonton shop owner, and basically her mom deals with a lot of heavy mental illness issues, so much that her mom has trouble getting out of bed and kind of living a normal life. And this is the discussion of what happens when your parents go through something like that, and that you need to kind of grow up faster than you normally typically would. And this is also kind of like a love story between her and also the cute new delivery boy. And the last book that I kind of want to get to very quickly is this one called Yoke by Mary H.K. Choi. She came out with the book Emergency Contact around 2 years ago. Last year she came out with a book called Permanent Record that I have not read yet, but I'm excited to read. This one is a Korean American novel about two sisters who used to be really close-knit and together, but they've grown apart. The older sister has a very strict, no-nonsense finance job. Meanwhile, the younger sister doesn't really go to school and is really late and has a type B personality. But what happens when one of the sisters actually has cancer, and then now they have to kind of go through it together and kind of learn to be closer together. So anyways, that is it for all the book recommendations and my discussion of the current events that are happening. If you do not feel safe, please do not go outside by yourself. Go with a buddy, meet up with a friend before you go outside. And yeah, we're gonna get through this together, and hopefully you guys can pick up some of these books and add it to your TBR to learn more about everybody's cultures. I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.